Inverse trig differentiation. That's the topic we're gonna talk about here. Okay. But before we start, you need to memorize these rules. I wrote it down here. So inverse sine derivative is 1 over square root 1 minus x squared. Inverse cosine derivative, negative 1. Okay. So only thing difference between inverse sine and inverse cosine is just opposite sign. Okay. Inverse tangent derivative is 1 over 1 plus x squared. And also inverse cotangent is opposite sign of that inverse tangent. So negative 1 over 1 plus x squared. And inverse cosecant is a little different. Negative 1 over absolute x and square root x squared minus 1. And inverse secant x, take a derivative, then 1 over, right? It's the opposite sign of inverse cosecant, okay? 1 over absolute x and then square root x squared minus 1. That one you need to memorize it, okay? Now, let's do number 1. So, when you take a derivative, so inverse cosine is negative 1 over square root and then 1 minus that inside that one square. It's cube and square times chain rule, right? You have to do chain rule. So derivative that negative 5x cubed is a negative 15x squared. Okay, so when you simplify, 15x squared over square root 1 minus 25x to the 6th power. Can leave it like that. Okay, that's your final answer. Now number 2. So when you take a derivative, inverse sine is 1 over square root 1 over square root 1 minus negative 2x squared times chain rule. Derivative that, don't forget chain rule, negative 4x. Okay, so then when you simplify, negative 4x all over square root 1 minus 4x to the 4th power. Okay, that's your final answer. Let's move on to number 3. Derivative inverse tangent, we already talked about it. 1 over 1 plus x squared. So derivative 1 over 1 plus that 2x to the 4th power square times, don't forget chain rule again, 2x to the 4th power derivative is 8x to the 3rd power. So when you simplify, 8x cubed over 1 plus 4x to the 8. Okay, that's your final answer. Now number 4, when you take a derivative, inverse cosecant, that is negative 1 over absolute x, which is but absolute for x squared, you don't have to put absolute because that guarantee positive. So 4x squared square root x squared, so 4x squared minus 1. But don't forget also chain rule, 4x squared is 8x. Okay, so when you simplify, negative 8x over 4x squared, I'm going to simplify further a little later, square root of 16x to the 4th power minus 1. So your final answer, when you reduce this one, negative 2, and x, one of the x cancel out. So only thing you have on the top, negative 2. And this one is just x, square root 16x to the 4th power minus 1. Okay, that's your final answer. But you need to put absolute now because, for this format here, remember you put absolute here, but now you after you cancel out, make sure that one is absolute. Okay. Next one, number 5. So when you take a derivative, this on power first. So 3 of inverse sine of 5x squared, right? That's power. Now times derivative inside, derivative inverse sine. So 1 over square root 1 minus that inside square, so 5x squared times chain rule 5x squared, which is 10x. Okay, so then now you need to simplify. So which is 30x, 3 times 10x, 30x. And then you can say inverse sine 5x squared all over square root 1 minus 25x the fourth power. Okay, that's your final answer. Now number 6. So inverse sine derivative, which is 1 over square root 1 minus 3x to the fifth plus 1 cube, that one square, times derivative inside here by chain rule. So then 3x to the fifth plus 1 square times chain rule again, this inside, 15 x to the fourth power. Now you need to simplify. So then that's a 45 x to the fourth power, 3x fifth plus 1 square all over square root 1 minus 3x to the fifth plus 1. 3 times 2, you multiply this, so which is 6. Okay, so yeah, that's your final answer. Okay. Now, the next one is number 7. So when you take a derivative, power rule first. So 2 inverse cosine 4x times. Now, derivative inverse cosine by chain rule, that is negative 1 over square root 1 minus 4x square times the chain rule 4x squared is 8x. So your final answer 16x inverse cosine 4x but negative over square root 1 minus 16x the fourth power. Okay, that's your final answer. Now number 8, when you take a derivative, inverse cosine derivative is negative 1 over square root 1 minus negative 2x cubed minus 3 cubed per square times derivative that is a power of 3 negative 2x cubed minus 3 square times the derivative inside again, that's a negative 6x squared. Now, so when you simplify, 18x squared negative 2x cubed minus 3 squared. I don't think we need to simplify that further on the numerator. And denominator, square root 1 minus. Also, you can leave it as negative 2x cubed minus 3. 3 times 2 is a 6. Okay, so that will be your final answer. Okay. And let's do sum of it here. So many problems, but I'm going to do only selective problems. Let's do number 2. What about arc sine t squared? So when you take a derivative, so then arc sine means inverse sine. So 1 over square root 1 minus t squared times derivative inside, which is 2t. So your final answer 2t over square root 1 minus t to the fourth power. Okay, that's your final answer. Let's do one more, 3. So g prime of x, arc sine, inverse sine, arc cosine, inverse cosine derivative is 3 is just there. Negative 1 over square root 1 minus x over 2 squared times the derivative 1, x over 2 is 1 half. Okay, so you can simplify it a little further. So negative 3 half root 1 minus x squared over 4. Now, let's multiply top and bottom by 2. You're allowed to do that. Then you can, get rid of fraction over fraction. So just negative 3 on the top. In the bottom, multiply by 2 means inside the square root, actually you multiply by 4, right? So then square root 4 minus x squared over 4 times 4 will be just x squared. So that's your final answer. Okay, so I'm gonna do. Now let's do then number 8. Okay, number 8. I need some space, so let's erase this. Number 8. So when you take a derivative, this is quotient. So denominator square, low, derivative high. So derivative inverse cosine is negative 1 over root 1 minus x squared minus high d low. So inverse cosine x times derivative x plus 1 is 1. Okay. Now let's see how you're gonna simplify this. So then you can say negative x plus 1 and root 1 minus x squared minus common denominator, so root 1 minus x squared inverse cosine x root 1 minus x squared, and that divide by x plus 1 squared. Then you can say, instead of writing this way, you can say times 1 over x plus 1 squared. Okay, then you can just say negative then x plus 1 plus inverse cosine of x and then root 1 minus x squared over root 1 minus x squared times x plus 1 squared. Okay, you can leave it like that. Final answer. Now let's do number 9. That one is a product rule. So product is u prime. So e to the 2x. E to the 2x is so look, e to the f of x. When you take a derivative, e to the f of x times f of prime of x, right? That's the rule. Then e to the 2x times derivative 2x is 2 times inverse sine of x plus. Now inverse sine derivative is 1 over root 1 minus x squared. We already memorized. Times e to the 2x. Or you can say e to the 2x, you factor out. Then 2 inverse sine of x plus 1 over root 1 minus x squared. You can leave it like that. Okay? That's your final answer. Okay, so we talk about how you're gonna take a derivative of inverse trig function. Okay? That's it.